Okay, hello. This is the webinar starting from the UAE chapter. I can see we have Giovanna and we have Janet international. Hello, good afternoon, good day to all of you. We have We have more people joining. We have about 14 registrations. However, not everybody has showed up yet. We also have our guest speaker already connected. Let me just give you a quick introduction again about ICF, who is the organizer of this webinar. So the ICF UAE chapter is a non-profit organization we are established in 2012. At the moment, we have about 258 members, and the aim of our chapter is to promote our profession and its advancement for members across our region. And today we have the honor to have Janet Sernack with us. She's located in Australia, and that explains why we hold our webinar at midday. Janet, a very warm welcome. And Janet will talk about coaching for innovation and agility. And I would like to hand over to Janet. Janet, that you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself. How you've come to the coaching profession maybe, and what your prime goals are going forward, and then lead us through your webinar topic. Thank you.
Great. So thank you so much for inviting me. It's always incredibly humbling and a great honor to be presenting to my peers. So thank you for investing your time and energy today in exploring innovation and agility, especially now that innovation is emerging as a management responsibility and a desirable change in leadership competency, which means for us as coaches, whether we're life coaches or executive coaches, it's going to be really important to top up our toolkits and our skill kits. So a little bit about me. I'm the founder and CEO of Compass Learning, and Imagination is a startup within Compass Learning. And at Imagination, we lead the way in helping businesses achieve their innovation goals by challenging businesses to be, think, and act differently. And we do this so they can co-create a world where people matter and innovation is the norm and a way of life. So for me personally, I grew up in one of the most dynamic, exciting and entrepreneurial industries in the world, which was the fashion industry. So I'm a product of the swinging 60s, the outrageous 70s, and I've played from being a fashion designer and a product manager to finally becoming a top global retail fashion marketing executive for the biggest department store group here in Australia in the 80s. I left my fashion career and became a serial innovator and set up a business management consulting practice where I played in design management, strategic marketing, business planning, TQM, corporate training, facilitator, and finally an ICF accredited coach. The reason that I've done this is that the best laid plans, as you all know, often end up in the bottom drawer because people don't know how to implement change. So I'm a bit of a change agent. I love change. And it was really funny. I found myself in my mid-50s, and they say that vintage is cool. So I'm cool too. Some of you may be as well. To take the plunge and became a startup entrepreneur. And Imagination is the result of that. So what happened is that I became agile. I had to. If you are creating a startup, agility is really important. I became incredibly adaptive. I mean, how do you reinvent yourself so many times in the course of in the course of what I've just expressed as a 40-year career? to become relevant to my clients, to grow and evolve my business globally so that I can provide my clients with increasing value by knowing how to be, think and do things differently. So I guess if I can do that, you all can too. So what I'm going to do in this webinar is just to give you some context about what we mean by innovation and agility so that you can broadly apply that to your coaching practice. Here's the point. What I realized when I started working in innovation is that it's one of the most misunderstood terms in business today. And when you start to add words like lean, agile, startup, the linguistic playing field becomes even more complex. So welcome to the webinar today, where we're just going to really give you an opportunity to explore and define what these mean, how they integrate so that they can provide you with relevance and value to your client base. And also, I really believe that innovation agility is the most important skill set to cultivate for the future. So as we set up, Uta and I'm going to talk about the key drivers and why innovation is on every CEO's strategic agenda, what innovation and agility mean, and a little bit about the 3 C's, so the confidence, competence, and the capacity, and how you might start to practice this. So I'm going to be asking a lot of open questions and creating the space for you to ask questions as we go through the webinar. So you might like to take a moment to reflect how learning any of these 4 takeouts might accelerate your career and success as a coach. And if you're a facilitator or a trainer or a consultant, consider, why these might be important for you and what you might want to get from the webinar. And I guess that's critical because we're living in times of uber change and uber connectivity, and it's just relentless. And I love this quote. It actually comes from a McKinsey paper that I read. An innovation involving not only products and processes, but business and role models is rapidly evolving in a world of digital disruption and increasing uncertainty. And living in the Middle East, you're absolutely at the epicenter of this. And I like the second line, and it's why I use this quote, requiring us to question even what it might mean to be human in such a radically different world. Now, I presented just before Christmas here in Melbourne at the ISPIM Innovation Conference. And what I noticed, this is the International Association of Professional Innovation Practitioners. There you go. That's what it means. What I noticed is that a lot of people, so there were academics and consultants from all over the world there, they were really grappling with the people side of innovation, not only what it might mean to be human, but a lot of the consultants seemed to be really tired about in their endeavours to get people to accept change, to make changes, and were even talking about, well, now that we've got digitisation and technology, we can get rid of the people. However, that's not the case, which is why at Imagination we make a stand for People Matter, because it's actually going to be people who advance the technology, who create the new markets, who create value for customers and develop the competitive strategies. So that's why we play on the people side of innovation. Organisations don't innovate, people do. So look at you. Here's some pictures I found on the internet. Dubai in 1990, and I actually was in Bahrain in the 70s, and it didn't look too different to this. But look at how you look today. So, you've, in your lifetimes, you've experienced all of this change, and here we are in Doha in 1977, pretty busy. That's probably what Bahrain looked like when I was there in the early 70s, to look how magnificent it looks today. And even Saudi is changing its rules of the game by allowing more space for women to contribute. And here we are driving. So you're at the epicenter of what Peter Diamandis expresses as the 7 most important factors happening that makes the world such an abundant and sea of possibilities, of blue ocean possibilities, he calls it. So he talks a lot about the macro trends and the patterns that are impacting on the environment that we're living in. And he talks about these as accelerating change, and we're living in a world where the only constant is change. So I'm just going to quickly overview these because they're really opportunities for you, and they're also opportunities for your clients. And one of the things that I notice, the most difficult thing of working with clients is in the innovation space, is getting them to go up into what we call the divergent space or the social field, to actually look at what's happening from the outside in the field or in the social field or in the business environment. They don't seem to be, until you intentionally get them to look outside of themselves, outside of their business, outside of their job role, outside of their community, that they can't see what's possible for them and where the openings are out there for new business ideas, for creativity, invention, and innovation. So, computers are working at the speed, they're doing more calculations per second than they could 20, 30, or even 10 years ago. So computation is accelerating. I saw today on an MIT webinar that I watched this notion of a digital thread. Look that up. It's amazing what computation can actually make changes to products, to smart design in products through what they call a digital thread. Who would believe that could happen? Convergence, we're seeing convergence of different technological advances. So we're starting to see, for example, how medical technology and telephone technology have converged to us being able to soon do our own diagnostics on our apps. Interface moments, we've got interfaces opening up areas like robotics and 3D printing. Sensors now will be, you look at sensors, how if you look at a property here in Australia, you go to the domain web page and the sensors then actually start putting properties that are available for you on your Facebook page, and we mightn't necessarily like that. The advent of AI, the whole notion of connectivity. There are more people, 3 billion people connected to the internet. That is up 1.8 billion from 2010. And Peter Diamandis from Singularity University says that there will be 8 billion people connected by 2018. And then, of course, wealth concentration. Who would have thought that an internet pioneer like Jeff Bezos would be the most wealthy man in the world? My point is that Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, they're all putting millions of dollars towards philanthropic causes that will benefit not only themselves but humanity at large. So there's lots of opportunities, and there's also lots of problems. And living again in the Middle East, as it's pretty much the epicenter of a lot of the world's problems. So we talk about wicked problems. If you haven't heard that term before, it's a problem that is difficult or impossible to solve because of incomplete, contradictory and changing requirements that are often difficult to recognize. So we had the global financial crisis, the re-emergence of nation states we just had in Spain, part of Spain wanting to succeed. We, of course, have the geopolitical instability and the war in Syria and the constant refugee crisis, not only in the Middle East, but also in Myanmar, and Brexit. Who knows what that's going to bring. And we have some unlikely characters in charge of the destiny of the world. So there's another notion. We don't know what's going to happen in terms of random and unpredictable and unexpected events. And Nicholas Taub, who's actually a Lebanese American, termed the notion of black swan events. So we don't know what's going to happen, but whatever's going to happen, we need to be prepared for it. Bringing it closer to home, what we've noticed with our clients is that most organisations are struggling. Businesses, people, they're struggling to make sense of innovation in their own unique context. They think that just if I put on an innovation manager, that's going to make us innovative. But they don't realise that there's different types of innovation and that they need to put it into their context so that it is meaningful. People, as I said, they might say, oh, let's have an innovation project. What we've realised is that they don't know how to align and leverage innovation strategic, systemically and culturally. Innovation is about culture, it's about strategy, it's about working the whole system of your business. The other point that we notice with clients, because these are some of the things as coaches we're going to need to help them with, is that they don't know, because innovation involves change on steroids, they don't know how to deal with the barriers and the resistance, because what we need is readiness and receptivity. So there's going to need to be a lot of help here, and we talk about the notions of psychological safety, unfreezing, unlearning, because I can see, being as vintage as I am, that the change that's happening in corporate learning and coaching and leadership and culture is as big now as what it was when it last shifted in the 90s. The other thing clients are struggling with, how to adapt to how the leadership paradigm has shifted, to redefine what it means in the context of innovation. It's completely different to what it has been in the past. And then, of course, as I said, people are struggling to understand and manage the interface between people and digitisation. So they're taking a perspective that I will call either or. So for us, we need to be, as innovation coaches and leaders, we need to be innovators and transformers, and more so than ever before. And, you know, I've worked in the transformational leadership space for more than 20 years. So we need to understand the power of change and the full range of digital technologies. So if you haven't enrolled in a digital strategy course or a digital leadership course, then you're missing out, because we need to understand our clients' world. And if they're struggling to understand it, you know, we need to understand what that's about. From data to mobile and artificial intelligence, and lead the impact that, so that we can have an influence on products, services, business models and people. So where are people going to fit into all of this? So, you know, our role as coaches is just getting stronger and stronger. And you might want to ask, you know, if you want to use the chat box, how does this relate to your business environment? What are you noticing about the key changes and challenges and how they might be impacting on your clients and your business environment? And how might, if you know more how to respond to these, how might that help you? So I'm happy to open the line now for a quick discussion if anybody has any questions or anything that they've noticed. And Uta is watching the chat box, and she will unmute you. Yes, and I'm happy to answer. Yes.
message as well. So anybody who wants to join in, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you. See any feedback at the moment coming through.
So, I mean, you guys are living with, I had up on the screen, you know, the incredible environmental changes. So how are you noticing how that's impacting on business or on clients or on your business or not? I'll stop at other points in time if there are no questions yet. So 3, 2, 1, no questions? Okay, happy to keep on going. So I guess at another conference that I was at for a superannuation fund or the superannuation funding industry, one of the things that came out of that conference was we need to swim with the tide and not against it. You know, you swim with the tide or you drown. So if you swim with it, then you can be agile like a cougar. And I've chosen the cougar as my mascot for these webinars because the cougar has the ability to be quick and graceful. And how I've adapted that to our work at Imagination is that it symbolizes one's ability to adapt and direct the course of power through one's life with grace, speed, and grit. So think about those words. So grace means to be able to do things elegantly. We need to move fast and we need some grit. And if you think of grit, you know, in the past people have said, well, that brings up courage, boldness, bravery, determination, all those sorts of things. It also involves the ability to make intentional shifts in order to be effective in changing contexts. So when you think about intentional shifts, it means almost, we say in coaching, dancing in the moment. In a coaching session, this is about being able to dance in any moment and being able to teach our clients how to do that. So let's look at why that's important and what we mean by innovation and how they integrate. So some people say that innovation is just change that adds value. And if you don't take away anything else from this webinar other than the word value, that's okay, because everything in the 21st century is about value. So you might want to consider when you're working on your own business or with a client, how does your offering make buyers' lives dramatically more simple, productive, convenient, or fun and stylish? Now, one of my colleagues, Hanan, has shared with me the Sheikh's vision for Dubai for 2030. And it's not going to be about, she said, it's not going to be about creating another fashion boutique or helping someone create a new business. It's about creating an offering that makes buyers' lives dramatically more simple, productive, convenient, fun, or stylish. Or it might be about how does our offering reduce the buyer's risk? Or it could be how does our offering deliver a leap in environmental friendliness, including social consciousness that buyers value. So everything to do with innovation is about adding value. And we just see simply, it took me a couple of years to come up with such a simple definition. Innovation is knowing how to see, respond to opportunities and solve problems in creative ways that people value and cherish. And we know that the world is full of problems that aren't going away. And Albert Einstein famously said we cannot solve the problem with the same thinking that we use to create it. So we think about all those opportunities that digitization offers, and then we look at all of the problems that we need to confront. And then what we need is a skill set at the front end of innovation, which we call the generative discovery skill set, that Clayton Christensen endorses as the most important skill set for innovation leadership, and it certainly is for innovation coaching. And then we incorporate that with the human-centered design thinking skill set, so that ability to think divergently and convergently, and then with a back-end lean execution skill set, which we use as startup methodologies. So, you know, we need to be really proficient across these three domains. So it's fun. So we need to be able to see a problem with fresh eyes. We need to be able to understand it from what's happening out there in terms of the patterns and the trends in the business environment. And then when we've spent time here, we can almost act in a moment to use lean startup methodologies to create a solution. So what most people don't know is that there's 4 types of innovation. So there's no best type. What we really want to do is to be able to strategically choose what type of innovation is relevant to us or important to us, depending on our strategic intent. So if you want to be, say, the global thought leader, then you might want to experiment with radical or disruptive innovation, because you will create a new market for a new product that's never previously existed. So it's okay to create incremental innovation if you just want to create minor improvements. The most important thing is to decide which type of innovation you want to strategically pursue, and then to consider whether you want to focus on individuals, teams, culture, or ecosystems, and now I can put digital threads in here, or across all of those. So we operate across all of those, and when we do a innovation culture intervention, it crosses all of those fields. So I'm just saying it's important to make the choice is to be strategic, be human-centered, and to look at the whole system. There's no best way, there's just what depends on what it is you're trying to achieve. So what we say at Imagination, when we merge agility and innovation, it's having the speed, grace, and grit to make intentional shifts in response to the unexpected, so those black swans, those wicked problems, and to solve problems and safely disrupt to create changes that are valued and cherished. So I know that's a lot to take in, so I'll give you another opportunity to ask some questions. And I'd be curious to know, how do some of these definitions or concepts differ from what you thought or knew about innovation and agility? Some of you might have thought that agility was just a software program. And then I'm curious also to know, how might knowing these definitions potentially enable you to add value to the quality of your clients' lives? So I'll just give you a moment to reflect on your initial responses. Use the chat box or ask me live your responses to those questions. Be like a cougar, be brave and bold.
There is Sohia who has raised her hand, so I unmute Sohia. Sohia, you should be able to talk now. Sohia? Sohia, I unmuted you. That is strange. She raised her hand. I've unmuted her. Sohia, are you still there? Yes, she wrote something in the chat message. I sent her a message also. Sohia? No. She does not seem to want to comment at the moment, Janet.
Okay. So
maybe
anything you want to add? Yeah.
Can I make a comment? I'm like,
of course.
I don't want to put you off course here. If I do, then just stop me. I'm just thinking of all, you know, the young people joining organizations. We call them also millennials, and I kind of think that they probably have a different perception of agility than the more mature generation in corporations.
Absolutely. The young people have a different set of, a whole different set of motivators. They're much more into having meaningful and purposeful contributions. They're also much more into learning fast and agility. I think their notion of agility is probably not so different from the definition that I use from Pamela Meyer, which comes from play, is that they're probably much more flexible and adaptive and able to make those intentional shifts in changing contexts. So agility is about speed and grace, so being able to move quickly. Some of the challenges, though, that I've had around working with millennials is that they'll watch a TED talk for 18 minutes and then consider themselves as subject matter experts. So there's a lot of opportunities to work both with them and to also mentor millennials. So look, what do you think they see differently?
No, I appreciate your views. Yeah, I would make similar observations.
Yeah. I think too, millennials are much more into social entrepreneurship, certainly here in Australia and in other countries that I'm working in. They are great at driving perceptions around a triple bottom line, which is people, profit and planet. So the millennials have got much more of a social conscience. And that's really exciting because that's adding a lot of energy to the entrepreneurship movement. Okay, so let's look specifically at coaching, which is the area that we're all specialising in. So when we're coming or coaching for innovation agility, it's really about cultivating your ability to shift your way of being, thinking and doing to fail fast, to learn quickly. Now there's so many terms in there. So when you coach for innovation agility, you are coaching from a very different kind of energy and a very different set of mindsets and emotional states. You're coaching from a very different way of thinking. We call it critical thinking, creative thinking, which is very different from the analytical thinking that we are habitually trained to do. We're also doing things very differently because we're taking risks, we're experimenting, we're making mistakes, and we're actually learning from failing, which means that we need to have those strong emotional states to help us bounce back and learn from those mistakes. So when we talk a lot about agility, it is also about failing fast to learn quickly, and that requires a lot of almost fortitude, and I can say that from experience. So what we need to be able to do is to respond to complex adaptive systems, which means that we need to be able to see and sense them. So that's a lot about divergent and convergent thinking. The unexpected and the unplanned, so there are those black swan events, complexity and chaos, and be okay with it. You know, it's like another term that we use for that, which is a really fun metaphor, is to be able to dance in disequilibrium. So whatever happens, you need to be able to bring out the creative ideas and the innovative solutions. We talk about operating from necessity, which is the mother of all invention, possibility around what could be, and this whole notion of wonder and awe and imagination to create novelty ideas that may have never previously existed. It's about punctuating, provocating, and disrupting the status quo. So being bold and brave to be contrary, to differ from what is being said and from what people accept as business as usual. So that involves a lot of courage and compassion. And what we need to be able to do is to emerge possibilities and opportunities, and we say from the playing field of the future. And then, of course, is to see and solve problems generatively. Now, as I said, you know, it's a new linguistic playing field, and it took me a lot of research, full-time research actually, to understand and really define the language of innovation moving forward. So if it's a little bit new and confusing, that's probably really good, because you need, in the space of innovation, you need to be a little bit confused to reflect and retreat and allow clarity to come forward. So in the context of coaching, it's both transactional. So, you know, there are times when someone has a problem and you coach them to come up with a solution. So, yeah, there are times when it's transactional. There are also times when it's transformational. So we have the chance to distinguish what is most appropriate for the moment and make that intentional shift when we're with our clients. So as I said, it is a bit of a dance in disequilibrium. So at Imagination, we use Otto Scharmer's work, or Theory U, and emergence as the learning structure and experiential process for coaching from innovation. So you might ask, what then is emergence? And emergence is very simply the process of bringing something into existence or prominence. And what we do is we need to know how to emerge new possibilities for innovation that allow us to create radical, radical, surprising, and unexpected new ways. And I use these words of particularly because they are going to need to be leadership qualities: sensing, being able to be present, fully present, perceiving, being able to multiply our perceptions to ideate and solve problems. So that's really key. What we want to be able to do as safe, disruptive provocateurs is to be, think, and act differently. So when you're coaching for innovation, it's really important to become aware of the current reality and be willing to transform wicked business and technology problems into creative ideas and innovative solutions that customers value and cherish. And we say simply, by being different, thinking differently, and acting differently, to make the difference that you want to make in the world. So it's really important when you're coaching for innovation to have a very strong, passionate purpose. Why are you doing it? Because you're really dancing in uncharted waters, and you need to lead the way because you're going to ask others to do that same kind of dance. So we describe a coach for innovators as someone who contributes the best of oneself and generates the best from others for the good of the whole, as a coach or as a leader in the context of innovation and entrepreneurship. So we're provocative. So there's really three very important words: safety, disruption, and provocation. They're the key themes if you're coaching for innovation, because we want people to be, think, and act differently, because, as I said, that Albert said, you can't solve the problem with the same thinking that created it. So there you go. So the key capabilities, this is based.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, question?
I've just noticed that somebody raised a hand, which is, hold on, Vanessa. Vanessa, I unmute you so that you can speak. I hope I caught your raised hand at the right time. Are you there, Vanessa?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
I just wanted to ask, I finished my master's in design management innovation, and I'm also a coach. And
Hello?
Can we just lost you? Yeah.
Vanessa?
Vanessa's just dropped out, I think.
Yeah, we lost you, Vanessa. Would it be possible to type your message, maybe, if you can hear us by any chance, into the chat room? I think she's completely disappeared. She's offline now.
Oh, she might have dropped out. But I'm happy to, if she comes back in, I'm happy to stop at any time to
Back, let me see.
answer her question.
Vanessa, are you back?
yes,
Hello?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so my question was how, like this is a new concept, and when you start using words like disruptive and changing environment and I don't know, unexpected things that are unexpected, people feel like they don't grasp the concept. So how do you start proving its value, knowing that it's a case-by-case scenario and you really have to be within a project to be able to practice empathy towards users? So how do you start? I really don't know how to start proving the value of things when people don't trust you enough to be in a company doing this.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to dance around my slides and do an intentional shift in changing context. Okay, this is how we do it. And I'm really grateful for your question because I've been at the effect of not doing what you're asking, where I've been too disruptive and made clients very unhappy. So I've learned my response is because I failed fast to learn quickly. The first thing that we do, and certainly in our Coach for Innovators program, it's almost like what they don't teach you in business school. The first thing is to develop your own resourceful state, because sometimes when you're going into a company that wants to innovate, they know they want to innovate, they've got a really good reason to innovate, and they also know that it involves huge change processes, and typically they will resist change because of the emotional energy that it requires, and they will tend to move away rather than move towards change. And that, as you know, is normal human behavior. So one of the things that we do in our programs is support coaches to access what we call a resourceful state. So when I gave you my example of presenting at the ISPIM Innovation Conference here in Melbourne last year, I was the only person out of all the presenters that talked about the people side of innovation. And basically they crucified me. You know, they tore me to shreds because they were very much in denial about the people side of innovation. And I know, as you probably do from your studies, but from my research, is that people innovate, organisations don't. So the first thing to do is to resource yourself, your energy and your emotional states usefully. So what I could have done before I did that presentation was to have done some exercises, you know, around my personal power, around my authority states, around my congruence, my authenticity, and then that resistance would have bounced off me. So that's personally for me as a coach. So I can go in with authority on the one hand and liking on the other. The second thing, and this is a really, in our coach program, we probably spend about 3 or 4 web sessions just on stage 2. Stage 2 is creating what we call a safe container to gather the information and create the connectedness. And again, this is all new language. So we teach people how to create a collective holding space that actually pulls people towards the possibilities of innovation as opposed to pushing them towards. So it's a lot about deep rapport, trust, intimacy, mutuality, and that is such a powerful toolkit that what you want to do is pull people towards what it is that you're trying to co-create with them. So it does involve co-sensing, it does involve things like co-presencing, and it's very deep work. And the simple explanation that people use is psychological safety, but I actually think it's much, much deeper than that. And that is a lot about who you're being as a human being. And it's a lot about how you listen. We talk about level 4 listening, which is beyond empathy, which is actually generative, and how you frame your questions. And we've developed specific questioning patterns that are safely disruptive. And here, you know, I spend a lot more time with the coaches that we train in stage 1, 2, and 3 than any of the other stages of the coaching model. So that's my short answer for your question. Is there anything else you'd like to ask me? Because it's a really big question and it's something that we've all got to be really good at. So we've got to embody how we want other people to be and enact how we want our clients to be. Yeah, it's really scary stuff. It is scary for them because they're taking huge risks. So we use the word compassion. We go beyond empathy and we talk about courage, compassion, curiosity, connectedness, those kind of confidence, and they're all the things that from my experience, your course may have been different, but they're all the things that they don't teach you when you're at university or in business school. Because it's a roller coaster. Okay. And what comments do you have on that? I think it's a really good question.
Is Sur here who raised her hand again? Sur here?
Yes.
Sur here?
Hello.
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, dear, for this webinar. It's amazing, actually, what I'm hearing. And for me, it resonates so well with what I'm creating and what I'm doing currently. It speaks exactly that same language. How do I start? I think the question from Vanessa was, how do you show people this? And from my own experience, it feels like, from my own experience, is about creating in this process and creating in such a way and having such a process to think and to see things and respond to things from the moment, from this now moment, and engaging others as well in the process is actually delivering what is next. And engaging a community or people with you and in that process, allowing them to see your vision and what you see possible, and creating that momentum for people to go with you and follow your direction and see the results for themselves. What happens when we do it in a way that we've never done it before, and to see the results coming out immediately. This is how I see actually people embodying such a thought that would not have been possible for them to act upon if they were on their own.
Yes, so you're taking it, yeah, it is, thank you. I just I met a fellow sister. So it's really interesting. I just had one of the most creative people I've ever met on my coach program. And the most important thing that he's learned so far is 1 and 2 is how to be mindfully present, to actually learn how to be present to self, to listen to other, and to listen collectively to the whole system, to unplug from all of the old chatter, that's going on in his head. And then what you just reflect and contemplate, what is really going on and who am I being in the system, because I am the system, and if I change, the system changes.
Yes.
And creating a safe and collective holding space. Yep. Go on. Keep going.
Exactly. I think yesterday I was actually in a workshop on a circle where people wanted to change the system, but then realizing that actually changing people will eventually change the system. So it's not about going to the system wanting to change the system.
Exactly.
And creating a new model. And it's like seeing it from a new place, a new brand place, like which working with people would allow this to happen at the end. That was a breakthrough. So I believe as well in the leading such a process in that in innovation. I believe it's about as well letting go of a specific outcome. I believe it's about really being able to work in the moment with no attachment to a specific result or outcome. I think even not with the full faith and trust that the next step will show itself to you. And it's like as if you're reading the space and the space is working with you, not against you anymore. You're going like you're going on that flow, and it's actually you're being helped by people and by the field as well.
You've just said it beautifully. I mean, you've just wrapped up, the 6 key practices. I think just one thing, and I agree with everything that you've said, which means from an ICF perspective, in a way you're letting go of a lot. You're letting go of having to have a coaching model, and you're letting go of having to follow a step-by-step process. And the other thing that you are doing is you're really honing your coaching presence, your powerful questioning, your direct communication, and your listening to levels that you never could have imagined. So exactly what you're saying, but what I'm teaching is how do you listen to the whole system and the whole person with detachment, with an open mind, an open heart, an open will, to then come up with the best possible disruptive question to create what we call a crack or a collision, because innovation is the result of a collision between different meta programs or different mindsets. And then to go into a constructive debate that results in an inflection point or a right-hand turn or a creative idea. So it takes a lot of practice, because as I agree with you, you're letting go of a lot of stuff. Like when I invented imagination, I had to let go of everything I knew because it was in the way. There was no empty space to put all of these new things into. And that was really hard, because I had accreditations in everything known to mankind. And I was really attached, but I had to let go, because as you've said, let go to let come. Yeah, beautiful.
Ladies, I apologize. I have to remind you, in the sake of time, that there are some other people who have questions, and also that we try to keep on time with our webinar. So Janet, there are 2 more ladies who have raised questions.
Good.
Thank you so much for your comments. I would
please make sure to connect with me on LinkedIn or join the Imagination community, because I'll just say this, is that all around the world we're finding each other, and there is a global innovation ecosystem where we all collaborate and help. It's very generous. and we all help each other. So make sure to connect with me on LinkedIn or through the Imagination website, because together, you know, we can create a movement that creates that kind of change that you were talking about. Sorry. Yes, so more questions. Yes, great.
There's Giovanna. She made a comment. She said, would it be possible to have more explanations about divergent and convergent thinking, and also more info about level 4 listening?
Okay, so I'll give you an example. I'll go straight back to a really simple explanation. When I worked with the Coles-Meyer group, and this is a fashion story, so it's one we can all relate to. I was invited in to set up what was called a fashion and lifestyle office. Now remember, this was the 1980s. Part of the problem was that from the buying office, in those days, remember it's a long time ago, but it's a good story, so bear with me. The skirt buyer never spoke to the shirt buyer, and the shoe buyer never spoke to the handbag buyer, which meant if a female or a male customer went into the department store, they could not be guaranteed to find things that coordinated or matched. And that went right, you know, it sounds really crazy today, but that's how it was then. So my job was to research and actually forecast fashion and lifestyle trends, and then to educate the buyers how to buy in a way that the customer could understand, relate to, and get their purchase needs met. So what I used to do was to research what was happening, say, at the yarn fair in Italy in 1986. And then I would go overseas to the textile fair and see what they were forecasting for 1987. And then I would go to the designer shows and to the ready-to-wear shows and then look at retail. What I didn't know that I was doing then is that what I was trying to do was to see the patterns and the trends that were being communicated or being developed out there in the environment by the creators of the yarns, by the fashion forecasters, by the designers, and to try and find the connections between the trends to bring them into our concept. So when I talk about divergent and convergent thinking, is that my thinking was going up onto the top of the balcony of the fashion world to look at the patterns and the trends that were out there, find the connections, and then to converge them down into one statement, which might be modern classics, you know, with these 7 colours, and then to educate the buyers to buy accordingly to that concept. So I had a name as a fashion analyst and conceptualist. I didn't realise that I've been doing that ever since. So if you think about it in the context of innovation, and we go back to these slides, sorry, I'll just run back really quickly. You go back to these trends that Peter Diamandis talked about happening out there in the world, is that you need to go, you know, if you're interested, it would be really useful to go out and do some research. In Singularity University, online, free, these are the trends out there in the world that are converging. So then how could you bring these, how could you diverge these into one, you know, one opportunity for innovation? And that is divergence. So it's used a lot, and we have someone in the group in design thinking. We go out there to see, when I teach my coach program, I get people to look from the outside in to see what are the patterns around their problem, because the business problem that they use as a case study, because when they first think of that problem, they're only thinking of it in the now. They're not thinking of it in the context of what's going on in the world. So when they leave the office and go outside and see what's going on, then they can actually understand their problem and empathize with their customer much more. So that's the first thing. When I talk about, so I hope that's made it clear, and it is a skill set, and we've developed a pattern of questions that can help you go up into the divergent space and then down into the convergence. Level 4 listening, I think some of you already know this, is being 1000% present, totally detached to what it is a person is saying, to find a crack or an opening for something new to emerge. So it's a very generative, it's a very creative process. It's far beyond dialogue. It's far beyond empathy. It's almost a consciousness type of listening. And when you do this artfully, you can actually hear the crack, and that's when you come in with a provocative and a safe disruptive question, but not until you've created that collective holding space where the person has given you permission to go there, and you're prepared to be vulnerable enough to take whatever comes back at you, and the client is vulnerable enough and there's enough trust for you to go and explore uncharted territories. So I hope I've answered that question.
Another
Great
comment,
questions.
Janet. There's another comment from Amina. She makes a comment here saying disruptive provocateur is the key or the shift in coaching perspective, I guess. She wants verification here.
Yes. It is being a disruptive provocateur. It is the skill set that you learn. But I can only say that if I just say that in general conversation, people get scared. So I only use it really as a teaching point. But yeah, so yeah, being a disruptive provocateur. Another word people use that is less confrontational is contrarian. I'm a contrarian. You know, I'll come up with a contrary point of view. But the disruptive provocateur is if, you know, you have to have enough safety, permission and trust to play that role. And, you know, it goes back to what Steve Jobs said, you know, the world is changed by misfits and disruptors.
Amina, I've unmuted you also. Are you happy with Janet's response?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
But you've got to be so attuned. You've got to be really attuned to your client to go there. Sorry, I have another question.
Yeah. You mean we need to have a lot of rapport again to go there, to be using safe disruptive provocateur.
Yeah, and you need to like, I get so excited and enthusiastic, I forget it's deeper than rapport. And I'm NLP trained, so I know exactly what you mean. It's mutuality, it's attunement, it's total connectedness. So it's much deeper, because you're taking someone into potentially an unsafe space, because they're going to have to develop the courage, the confidence, the compassion and the curiosity to go, you know, on the innovation roller coaster. And I haven't even talked about that. So it's deeper. It's like generative the generative discussion is deeper than dialogue. Dialogue is only a level 3 conversation.
Thank you.
Oh, great questions. I love your questions. It's really nice to be with such an engaged group.
I've captured it all. There's nobody else who raised anything.
Okay, so to keep it really simple, Pamela Meyer talked about 3 types of, I guess, skill sets for agility, or 3 types of capabilities. The first is to be competent, and it is about practicing a different series of mindsets. We talk about 3. We talk about the beginner mindset, we talk about the growth mindset, and we talk about the gamer mindset. And we have very specific meanings for those. So you think, I know I thought I was really good at all of those when I started this work. So we don't, you know, it's like developing really good unconscious competence in those mindsets and being able to tune in when you get your client to practice those or not. There's a set of 6 behaviours. There's the different thinking strategies, so creative and critical and foresight. And then there's the generative skill set, which is about the listening, the questioning, and the debating. It's being able to create the safe, you know, to be safely disruptive, to see opportunities and solve problems, and to be able, as someone's already said, to be non-linear and non-prescriptive, because you've got to be completely detached, you know, and allow and actually coach someone to make their own decision. And this is so important. When I was interviewing startup entrepreneurs who'd been to business schools, universities and incubators in Silicon Valley, I said, did you learn how to be, you know, and how did that help you build your startup? He said, oh, not much. Didn't prepare me for the roller coaster ride. So you need to have a different, I used to call it emotional agility, but it's actually an agility capacity where there are certain traits, you know, like being individualistic, accountable. And there are certain emotional states that you need to cultivate so that you can flow and flourish with uncertainty, complexity, and volatility. And then there's the confidence. So you need to have that really big why. You need to have that grit and the determination. And the one I've struggled with is the self-efficacy, which is the self-belief or that sense of certainty, to trust your own and others' judgments, to let other people run with things, and then to be creative, collaborative, you know, in changing contexts. So all of this, you know, these are all deeply rooted within who you're being and why you're being that. So a little practice, I think, in adding value. I went last week, it was fantastic, to an applied improvisation conference. And I thought this would be a really useful frame for you guys to use as a takeout. Very much when you're working with a client, and a lot of I don't have time to do an activity because we used up the time with the questions, but what I would have done is, and you might want to practice this at home, is I would have asked one of you to share a problem with me, and I would be the coach. And I would invite the rest of the group to observe. So if you came into a problem, if you came in with me with an idea or a problem, I would respond first in, well, you can either do this or you can do that. And very often when you're working with a client, especially in executive coaching, people seem to think that the world is binary, it's black and white, that it has to be this or it has to be that. And very often that's driven by necessity. You know, necessity is the mother of all invention. It will drive innovation. However, one of the things that we work with that is really fundamental in innovation, and it goes back to my fashion industry story. If I couldn't see some evidence, if I thought I'd sensed a trend, if I couldn't see some evidence already existing, then I would not go forwards with that trend idea. So what we say is that in innovation, it's really important to adopt a both and perspective. And the point is, it's important to work with both what is. So if somebody's unhappy, if somebody's got problems, if somebody hates you, it has to be okay. You've got to work both with what is, because that's the current reality, and also work with what could be. So it's a little bit of a dance. I had a client when I was not safely disruptive, and I had a really difficult time with that client, and I had to deliver the outcome and work with what was going on without it killing me, even though it was really tough, and still fulfill my contract, be accountable for fulfilling my contract, and to take them towards what could be, to pull them towards what could be. So we always say that, you know, innovation is both and yet at this improvisation conference, they talked about yes and. So what we're doing when we're doing both and is we're operating from possibility. But if we want to be really creative, we go, yes, I really love that idea, and where could we go with that? And it comes out of Pixar, it's called plussing. It's really powerful. But imagine if you could, instead of people going, well, you got a problem, you either do this or that. Oh, you got a problem, so you need to consider both the client's perspective and our capability. Yes, and what if we co-created with the client this amazing product that just gave them everything that they wanted? So it takes you even higher in terms of adding value. So, you know, this is a wonderful way of playing. And again, either or is very transactional. And when you operate from what is and what could be, and you leap into the creative space with this notion of yes and where could we go, or yes and what if, which is what Pixar did when they were building stories, then you have to pay deep attention, you have to be intentional, you have to have coaching presence. You've got to come from not knowing. You pull people towards a possibility and not push them. This is pushing, either or. And you work with both what is and what could be. So I'm just conscious of your time. I know it's lunchtime, and we did agree we'd wrap up after 75 minutes. So I'm just happy to answer any last questions, because we've been through the models and you've got the idea of the practices. So if there are any last questions, I'd be happy to answer them before I wrap up.
I cannot see further questions, Janet.
Okay, well, conscious of time.
One coaching colleague who says he will connect. I guess that will be separate.
Yeah, connect with me. So
leave your contact details, maybe, that we can put them into the chat room here.
Yeah, I'll come up onto the last page. So you see that this is the model that we work with, and these are the practices. So, you know, you might want to think about what you could choose to initiate, because it's a journey. And, you know, like every journey, it's about learning. And you might want to think about, you know, if you learn to be, think, or do something differently, how could you improve the quality of your own or your client's life? And what will you do differently to make the difference that you want to make in the world? So, you know, if you practice being like a cougar, then you have the ability to stalk something that is desired and yet also be open in case something even better presents itself, which, you know, is in that field of infinite possibilities. So of course, I have my program. I've been talking to you about it a little bit. I've got another program starting in May. Happy to offer that to you guys in your chapter at the super early bird price. And here's how you can contact me. And also happy to offer you a free 45-minute consultation. I love talking about this stuff. It's my passion, it's my life's work, and it's the difference, you know, that will really change the world into a much better place that I guess we're all aspiring to.
Anybody, any further questions for Janet? Thank you very much, Janet.
Oh, look, it's been a delight. I had such smart questions. It's really good to work. I think they're the words, smart, speed, and connection. That's what's going to make the future a happy place.
I'm kind of just waiting whether there are any further questions from the audience, whether anybody has any remarks. If there are no further questions, Janet, then a really, really big thank you for your time. We know it's later in Australia for you. Appreciate the sharing of your knowledge with the members here at the ICF chapter in the UAE. Really appreciate it. And we hope to be in touch in the future and maybe can have another webinar with you on one of your new subjects. From the ICF chapter news, I would just like to mention what are the next upcoming events. So this week is actually the Happiness Festival from the 16th until the 20th of March. And there are some coaches who are actually coaching at the Happiness Festival. It takes place at the Dubai Design District. So if you're interested, maybe you just reach out to any board member, or you come just and show up and join. And the next webinar that will take place will be on the 9th of April at 8 in the evening, which is about mental toughness, the key to performance, well-being, and positive behavior. That is a webinar led by a gentleman called Doug. He is located in the UK. And also, we are currently preparing for International Coaching Week, which will start on 6th of May. So keep tuned for that and look for news from the chapter on that one. In the meantime, thank you very much for everybody participating. Special thanks to Janet, and hope to talk to all of you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
And thanks for having me. Bye now.